All right, it's 5:30. We're gonna go ahead and get started here. Call the meeting to order. Roll call. At-large Cummins. Here. At-large Poston. Ward 1 Welker.
Here.
Ward 2 Helm.
Here.
Ward 3 Johnston.
Here.
There he is. Hang on. At-large Poston.
Here.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there any additions to the agenda, changes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Cummins, seconded by Johnston.
Cummins,
Yes.
Poston,
Yes.
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
All right, on to the communications portion of the meeting. There isn't anyone scheduled. Is there anyone present that would like to address the council? No? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. These are routine items that will be enacted by one motion without separate discussion unless a council member requests separate consideration. Approval of the council meeting minutes from May 6th of 2024. Approval of the investment and treasurer's report of April 2024. Approval for liquor license for the Wandering Crowd for the kickoff summer event on June 8th. Approval of liquor license for the Tipton Chamber of Commerce kickoff summer event on June 8th. Approval of the trip reimbursement request for Mark Pooley at 424 West 6th Street for $7,500. Approval of the trip program request for the Dairy Queen at 911 Cedar Street. Approval of the mural at the park on the bathroom building wall by the volleyball pits. Approval of pay application number 12, replace Highway 38 Street South to Iowa 130, Triple B Construction for $224,297.90. And then approval of the claims register, which includes claims paid under the current purchase policy. Any questions about those items? Anything we need to discuss?
Motion.
Okay, motion by Welker, seconded by Helm.
Poston,
Yes.
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins.
All right, next item on the agenda is a public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget amendment. Need a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Johnston, seconded by Welker.
Welker,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Poston.
Yes.
Right, Melissa, is that?
Yep. This budget amendment is for the current year budget, which ends June 30th. It is, some of the changes that we had this time was for increased revenues for the industrial feeder project. We had some insurance reimbursements that we received funding for, as well as a couple grants. So those were reflected in that, and then some of the expenses included the industrial feeder project, the playground structure at the park, which we received a grant for, and then insurance claims and mechanical room repairs. And as of close of business today, we hadn't had any comments.
Questions? No? Questions from the council? No? No? Okay. Anyone want to make a motion to approve? Close. Well, to approve the, oh yeah, to close. To close, sorry. Oops. Okay,
Second.
motion by Helm, seconded by Johnston.
Welker,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Poschin.
Yes.
Thank you. Forgot what I was doing. All right. Moving on to city business. First item under city business is resolution number 052024A. The resolution amending the current budget for fiscal year ending June 30th of 2024.
I motion.
Second.
Motion by Johnston, seconded by Cummins.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Poschin.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, next item is discussion and possible action concerning change order number 4, replace Highway 38 South Street to Iowa 130 Triple B construction for $52,550. And Andy with Ordinance Design is here to talk about that.
Good evening. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about change order number 4. Change order 4 for the project does address a number of outstanding items that we've been discussing here at our local, small group progress meetings, and some of them even since last year. So it's a change to 4 existing contract items on the construction contract, increase or decrease in quantities, and then 7 additional items. And that's to address a handful of different related issues. So would you prefer I go through each kind of group of items and describe why they're on the change order? Does that seem reasonable? Try to keep it short, but in detail.
Yeah.
So the first item, this is just a single item, the replacement of unsuitable backfill. This item's on the change order to essentially backfill the entire water main trench as you see it out there now from on the entire length of this year's project, so 3rd Street to 7th Street. So the vehicles can still park on it, people can still walk across that trench, which is above and beyond what was required of the contractor under a standard DOT contract. So that's to allow access, safety, business access, that sort of thing. In this time frame we have now, since they started the water main up at 7th Street until they actually close the full roadway down, and some of that will remain even after the roadway is closed down, like across 5th Street. We're gonna try to keep that open as long as possible to try to keep as much access to those businesses as possible. Items 1040 and 1070, these are tree grade items. So there's the street trees that I'm sure everybody's familiar with down Cedar Street. That we were intending and hoping that we'd be able to just buy replacement frames for those things, and utilize some of the grates that are still in pretty good condition as a cost savings measure. But it turns out that can't be done. We're being told that you can only order those as a set. So we're adding the full 19 additional frame and grates, but reducing the frame replacement only items by 19 as well. Additional traffic control, we had some ideas over the winter of how to hopefully better address when we do shut down Cedar Street entirely and have the detour on Lemon, how to address that truck traffic and try to keep it confined to the detour route. I think things improved when we added the additional signage last year to not send trucks down residential streets, or to be able to enforce the ordinances of not allowing them to go down residential streets. This is a further effort in that vein. Safety fence, a new item, 8010. This is to essentially line, so the plan, as we've communicated at a couple of our public meetings here now, is to keep those sidewalks downtown. So this mainly focuses on 3rd to 6th, and to keep those sidewalks in place for as long as possible while they're doing the rest of the utility work when they close Cedar Street down, and then actually the entire time while they rip the street out, put the street back too. Keep pedestrian traffic, at least access to all the businesses there. This is a safety barrier between those sidewalks that will remain in place and the construction site that'll be right next to that, out in the center of the street. Let's see. Water main 10-inch, this was a pretty small item, but we did have to add, we didn't have any ductile iron pipe water main on the project that was required to make a tie-in up at 7th Street. Due to the nature of the existing pipe that was in the ground there. Items, that was a new item. Items 8012 through 8014, these are new 1.5-inch water service items. So this is a service to a private property on Cedar Street. We had 1-inch water service items on the contract and 2-inch water service items on the contract. That generally meets about 99% of projects' needs. Turns out we ran into 1.5 inches on this project. So we needed to add the items in order to pay the contractor to do that work. And I want to note here something that Brian pointed out to me. The change order doesn't really tell the whole story because we're adding those 3 items for a total net addition of $3,000. But what the change order doesn't show is that we would reduce the 1-inch service items that we'd have planned for that same property, which actually just ends up in a net increase to the overall contract by $675. So that $3,000 does get mostly offset by the items that won't be used. Item 8015 is a tapping valve assembly. This is for, there's a property owner along Cedar Street that asked for a tap into the main to supply a future fire suppression system. That requires a 4-inch service to that property. There's not an item that we had on the contract that would allow us to pay for that and have the specifications to cover that. So that's what this tapping valve assembly is. That covers the tap into the main, the tapping sleeve, and then a valve. And then from there on out, I understand the property owner would handle the rest of the cost of that fire suppression service and system into his building. Item 8016, a saw cut for partial sidewalk removal. So this is 1,600 linear feet of additional saw cut that was not previously required of the contractor in order to keep the sidewalks in place, essentially. It's a more phased demolition plan than what the contractor was previously required. They are required to provide access in some fashion to those businesses, but that could be through a number of means. You know, it could be all temporary surface, for example, but it seems more friendly to the businesses in that area if we can move those sidewalks in as long as possible. So that's the short but detailed version of change order 4. Would be happy to take any questions you have at this point on any of those items or anything else related to the project for that matter.
Is the city paying for 8015? Are we paying for that sub-assembly?
That assembly, that's, to my understanding, I don't know, Brian, if you have any other input.
Maybe that could be negotiated.
Well, I'm just wondering, it's something special that an owner requested. I wouldn't think we would have to pay for that. Just-
Originally, we were gonna, the intent was to have the contractor set a simple T and bolt a valve to it. I thought the city might pay for the T. It wouldn't be much more than a standard accessory gland pack or whatever
Right.
to make a connection and maybe, I assumed the property owner would pick up the cost of the valve. And, but this changed when they trucked on through there and forgot to set the T. So the good news is you can come back with a tapping sleeve, live tap, set a valve. It's a handy way to do it. And that service, from what I understand, is pushed back to be one of the last ones because there's a sewer manhole, a collector manhole, kind of a residential, almost even collector manhole that has to come out and be taken out of the way. So this one's gonna be last, but to answer your question, I'm not sure the city should have to pay that whole thing. Nonetheless, the contractor needs to be paid, but I think maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
We could negotiate that, I think. Let's try to negotiate that with the property owner. Probably be the right thing to do.
I think so. Anybody else disagree with that?
No, I agree.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Is the purpose of the fire suppression system to accommodate the apartments above the building
Yes,
and code compliance?
yes.
So it's Terry's fault.
Yes,
That's what I heard.
pretty much. I just want to make sure I'm thinking the right building property owner. Yes. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'll see if I can work with them to negotiate that. If we approve it.
Yeah, I think that's probably something to discuss with him.
So what was it that was wrong with the backfill material? Just, I'm not a backfill expert by any stretch.
That's a really good question. This is kind of a detailed thing. So the way the DOT specs work is and we want to use a select backfill material. That's the rock you see and putting in out there to make a strong, sturdy base that'll be around hopefully for the rest of all of our lifetimes. That the DOT spec only requires them to fill that trench back up to the bottom of the base for the paving. So there's gonna be additional rock that you'll see, kind of like last year, where the rock will cover the whole roadway surface, where the concrete will be placed on top of that. To the bottom of that rock level is all they're required to fill that trench up to. So it's not that there was a problem, it's that we added additional quantity, additional tonnage of rock to allow them to fill to essentially make it a requirement for them to fill that trench from the bottom of roadway stone to the top of existing pavement, so that people can drive and walk and park.
We just needed more.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Sorry, you said it much simpler than I did. Engineer, sorry.
My mind works that way too, but I just learned to speak differently. Make it plain.
Yes.
Any other questions? Any motion?
I'll motion.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Walker, seconded by Cummins.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Posturing,
Yes.
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
All right, next item, I think it's Randy also. Is discussion and possible action concerning Cedar Street curb removal and replacement.
For this item, I do have a visual that might help us see what's going on, what's being kind of proposed or talked about here. Brian, if you can just hit the power button on the display, I think it should pop up over on the sides here.
Oh,
Thank you.
I know.
So while that's warming up, I can kind of give a summary of what the environment of this discussion is. So the project was designed knowing that the downtown sidewalks and curbs were reconstructed here about 15 years or so. I mean, we were doing the design about 13 or 14 years before that. A lot of these curbs are still in very good functional condition. There's really nothing wrong with a lot of them. We can design the sidewalks outside of them to meet the new ADA compliance requirements. We can design the street within them to be functional and work as well. So that's what we did in this case. If the curbs didn't need to come out for some other reason other than they might look a little older than what the new concrete will, they didn't, come out by design. So there was about 925 feet of curb that is currently by the contract and plans meant to stay in place and be used. The term that we usually use in the construction industry is use as constructed. So it's just, they're gonna remain in their existing condition. It's been brought up a couple times at these progress meetings, a lot of times by Triple B, the contractor on the project, that it might be, worth considering replacing some or all of this curb that was originally meant to be left in place. And there's a couple reasons for that. It does provide a visual value to the project, having all of your concrete out there look like brand new white concrete and be matching and everything. There's a value to that. It is a nice looking downtown. It's gonna be a beautiful streetscape when it's done. Again, it currently is too. So there's an aesthetic value to replacing all the concrete. Aside from that, there isn't a functional reason necessarily that all of that curb and gutter does need to be replaced. So it's been brought up and discussed, by the contractor, city staff, our staff as well. And so it's just, I think Brian wanted to bring this to the council because it's a big decision. Do we really want to keep this old curb and gutter, old, aged, slightly aged curb and gutter in the downtown area? Do we want to plan to replace some of it? Do we want to leave it, entirely in place? And so kind of what I have shown behind you here, hopefully you can see that, is we've got exhibits from 3rd to 6th Street. And I'll describe, my mouse keeps working. What you can see shaded in green there, that is curb that's currently intended to be kept in place that could potentially be replaced, if the city so chooses. And I should take one step back. There's one other caveat to this. There were some additional water services that were identified during individual property owner meetings that it's an opportunity to fix some plumbing issue, if there's multiple services that feed into a single meter or different odd setups that were done back in the day that weren't, previously fixed. This is an opportunity to fix some of those. So some of the curb we had intended to stay would be taken out by those additional services. And there's only about 3 of those that we still plan to correct it,
Yeah,
if I understand.
I could add to that. What he's referring to is the 7 extras that I brought to you and we discussed about who would pay for the internal plumbing and that. We have run into multiple roadblocks and that list has been kind of a moving target. And we're down to, from the original 7, probably down to 3 now. Some of them just aren't doable. We're finding out there's a reason why they were the way they are. We found that out by crawling under crawl spaces, by digging, by identifying. We're learning as we go. Kind of what Andy's saying is, coming from the contractor, part of the push or the incentive to do this is the extra curbs that we're tearing up. But now we're not tearing up 7, right? We're tearing out 3. So maybe that's a small factor in this equation. So maybe it's not going to be quite as tore up as they anticipated.
That's right. So back to the exhibit, what I'm trying to show here, hopefully you can see. So this is, north is to the top of the sheet here. Starting out at 3rd Street, there's 1 sheet per block. So 3rd Street is the bottom of the sheet. And if I zoom out, 4th Street will be at the very top here. So the curb that's shaded in green is that curb that we intended to stay, keep in place, to use as it is constructed currently and build around it, essentially. And then you can see, for example, at Tyson's, there's a service there where we would need to cut through that curb, probably at most a 10-foot chunk of curb would need to come out there to put the new water service in all the way to the building or to the right-of-way line. And then that would get patched back in with new concrete. So this is an example of 3rd Street to 4th Street, essentially the entire east side, other than the alley and that 1 water service, what is currently intended to stay in place. The west side there are so many services and, we're reconfiguring the sanitary sewer, like Brian was mentioning, to make it more standard construction, not having all those services come into a manhole and then out to the main from there. So there's enough work going on there where it didn't seem to make sense to try to salvage any curb on the west side.
That was already figured in though.
That's correct, yeah. So anything that's not highlighted red or green was from the get-go, from the bid, intended to be removed and reconstructed. 4th to 5th is a different story. Most of this curb actually was intended on both sides of the street, which was different than what I told you earlier when we were talking, Brian. This is the courthouse block. Most of that curb is intended to remain in place for the current plans. So there'd be some consistency on that block. There is 1 service that we're planning on cutting back into that block yet, but other than that, all of that curb was intended to go. Another note on this block is, we're intending to reinstall the bricks that are behind the curb. There's a 2-foot section of sidewalk and then 3 foot of bricks behind the curbs all through downtown, as I'm sure you're all well aware. We were intending to use that 2-foot section of sidewalk and then the brick underlayment concrete as it's currently constructed. That's like $16,000 worth of construction costs that could be avoided if that were to stay in place.
That's part of this change order? No.
That's, sorry, thanks for mentioning that, Brian. No, I didn't include that on change order 4, any of this curb discussion, because it's a discussion. I didn't want that to hold up the rest of the 4 routine type items that are on that change order. So this is its own, it's included in the prices that I can discuss here in a minute, but this is all its own separate issue, unrelated to the rest of the change order. And then if I flip to our last sheet here, all of the curb essentially was planned, other than the last 125 feet on the west side was already planned to be replaced from 5th to 6th. And so, and that curb has generally already been mostly removed to replace services to like the Gathering and where Oasis Coffee Shop on the building there, so. That's the synopsis of what curb was intended to stay, could be removed or replaced, may not be, that's what we're discussing. In terms of costs, curb removal for the additional 3 services and service work is roughly 155 linear feet of curb, and which is a little different than like Brian's mentioned, this is a constantly evolving, the water services are a constantly evolving animal. So that's a little less than what I had communicated to Brian and Melissa here late last week. So that would come out to a cost of $6,235 for that curb replacement for the water services. For the remaining, if the city were to say we want all brand new curbs through our entire downtown, there's a 770 linear feet beyond that would need to be replaced of curb and gutter. That comes out to $46,000, $46,800 roughly dollars. So that total is about $53,000 if the city were to choose to replace all of the curb, everything would be brand new concrete in the downtown area for the entire project, I should say. And that includes that bit of sidewalk and paver base that's on the courthouse block.
You didn't mention anything from 6th to 7th. What's going on there?
6th to 7th, it was always planned to be brand new curb for the
Okay.
entire stretch. It's in rough.
I assumed that. I just didn't want to assume.
Yeah.
Based on your email, I realize this is probably changed, but of the $53,010 that it mentioned, it looked like just shy of 28,000 was the optional part. The rest was being done as part of the project, whether service lines were going to go, or the sidewalk you mentioned, and the pavers.
Yeah.
So it looked like, I don't know what the end number is now, but out of the 53,000 in this email scenario, 28,000 is the real question. On whether or not to pave.
Yes and no. 28,000 is just the curb and gutter, and then there's that $16,000 that I mentioned. If you are to, I guess maybe I didn't state that very clearly. When I was talking about the courthouse block, I mentioned that sidewalk and paver base because if you're gonna tear the curb out for that block on the east side in front of the courthouse, it's very, very difficult and not recommended to leave that, any of the rest of that concrete in place. The sidewalk would have to come out to pour new curb, to form like the new curb and gutter, because that's immediately behind it. And then the paver base, you're already tearing out the curb and gutter, 2 foot of sidewalk, it doesn't make sense to leave 3 foot of paver base there at that point. So that's where, so it's the 28 and 16 comes to roughly the 43,000 is really the question. And then there's 6,000 that is required because of the services. So thanks for, I didn't state that very clearly the first time.
6,000 was the removal, correct?
Sorry.
6,000 was the removal?
That's everything, removal, replacement, brand new curb and gutter.
Council, if you're like me, you're sitting here wishing you were sitting there looking at it. It's hard to decide sitting here. So I wondered, and Andy, I guess it leads up to this question, time-wise, there's a tear out coming soon. I don't know how soon. Could this possibly be tabled? Could a small one, could we finish the water services the next few days? I don't know when sewer services are but there's gonna be a point that we can better assess, maybe with a small task force to come back and say, hey, here's our recommendation.
Yes.
I don't know if we have time for that.
We do, we have some time. So the schedule, that's a good point. I'll kind of quickly rehash the schedule here. So the roadway is gonna be closed down after Memorial Day. And so from that point, the next step for the contractor, finish water services, but then move on to sanitary sewer in the 6th to 7th block. Curbs entirely being removed and replaced in that block anyway. Then they'll flip back down to 3rd to 4th. And that's the point where, they'll get some main up the street, probably to the alley. That's gonna be the biggest thing. Get that manhole from 3rd Street up to the alley. And then from there, they'll be shooting services out along the way as they go. So that will be probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks here. You'll see them flipping down to that, and that's kind of probably gonna be the decision time, when it's starting to get a little more critical. So there is some time here to table this and think about it, if that's the preferred route.
Well, the next regular meeting is June 3rd. Do we have enough time until then, or do we do?
Yeah, yep. So close down the roadway. They won't even begin sanitary up in the first block, 6 to 7, until after the roadway is closed. Is that the 28th, I believe, is the plan. So it'll take them more than that amount of time to at least get through that 6 to 7th block and then flip down to 3rd to 4th.
You could give council members a little time to be bopped down through there too, and
Take a look.
take a look.
Yeah.
You said you had 3 properties that you're working with?
The water services are almost done. There's a couple more we have to visit yet. Yeah, several on the list are already passed, already done.
That'll give
wrote
you-
off, Whatever.
That'll give you a little more time also.
I'd like to look at it. I'd like to be able to see what we're visualizing, talking about.
If I could, looking at it is the right thing to do, but I wanted to, at least, as you're looking at it, do consider the aesthetics of it, because that is a significant length. And it's, one way of looking at it is, well, let's say 43,000. The other way of looking at it is, how's it gonna look when it's done? Will it look like a patchwork in some places? Will it look like it's mismatched? Since we've started doing this project, from time to time, I've asked the council to think of this as a once in 50-year project, maybe more. And you have this one chance to do it completely and do it right. And I have seen cases where council members of a current council, whether it's now or in the future, they look back at the decisions of past councils. And the thing that usually comes up as a criticism the most is they took the less expensive route when something else should have been more of an overriding consideration. I'm not saying that's the case this time, but I just wanted to put it in your mind that it's something to consider.
Brian, if I could add to that, there's a really good example, would be North Avenue. We left some curb there. That'll give you a really good idea what new looks like next to old. And people can come back and say, why did you do that? So, but that would be a spot to look at if you want an example. There's new and old curb up there both.
Okay. So everybody's okay with that plan, then we're circling back to it in a couple weeks, and that gives people time
Make
to
a motion to table it until we have a chance.
make a motion to table it. Yeah, okay.
I'll second that.
Was that Jason? Did he say something?
You just second.
Oh, he seconded it. Okay. So motion by Helm, seconded by Johnston.
Cummins,
Yes.
Posturing,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is discussion and possible action on approval of purchase of tax sale certificate from ACC 856 LLC.
This concerns the property at 124 West 10th Street. Along with the other properties we looked at, the 657A and then another one that we couldn't do under that statute, we decided at that point in time that because of the circumstances of that particular owner, it would be difficult to use court action. But then, after we decided to sort of skip that, we had a notice sent to City Hall because that property owes the city money in utility costs and other costs related to grass mowing and such. So we received this, usually when we get those, we don't do anything, we just let it play out. In this case, recognizing the address, we contacted Doug Herman about it and said, why don't we look at the people who purchased it on a tax sale and see if they'd be willing to transfer their interest in it to the city. Because I've seen these, and maybe you have too, where people purchase or pay delinquent taxes as an investment because it can bring in a high, like credit card-like interest rate. But there are times when they're not from around the area and they do it sight unseen. And we were assuming this was sight unseen. And so Lisa helped us by taking some photos of that lot. And we sent them to Doug, and Doug sent them to the company in Waterloo that picked up the property or is in the process and said, if you come to own it, you're going to inherit all the problems that it currently has. Would you consider just transferring it to the city at your cost? And they said yes. So in Doug's memo, he mentions that it would cost the city $2,870 to pay that company. Now, there are certain things along the way that could happen. The owner came into the right amount of funds. They could gain back ownership, though that probably isn't likely. So, of all the ways we've looked at on picking up these other properties with legal expenses and court process and time spent, this is probably the most efficient one if the council decides to pursue it.
And we would handle this if, in the assumption that this would all go smoothly, and we would handle this in the same manner we would handle the 657A properties as far as bringing them to building code or to property maintenance or occupancy compliance.
Or taking proposals from a next owner on what that next owner would be willing to commit to.
Yeah.
And that might mean demolition, for example.
Yeah, well, I think we would have to process it probably the same way. I mean, Terry would have to go through it and make sure it's even occupiable as it is, or if he would require it to be set for demolition, which would be part of the contract or part of the sale process,
Yeah.
bidding process.
Yeah.
Those terms.
So do we have an A plan, a B plan, a C plan, or do we just have possibles or?
For this lot?
Yeah.
It's just the one. We decided that the other ones, A and B that we've used in those other cases, weren't viable for this.
Okay, so if we do this, what is our desire? What do we want to do?
Get it away from the current owner.
Okay, that would accomplish that, doing this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And then either we could take action or we could find somebody who's willing to be the new owner who will take action.
And then we would sell it to them at some,
Good, yeah, we could.
we're not gonna give it to them, I trust.
We
Would
could-
have to go for bid, right?
Yeah,
to be
you
public.
could, you could make a minimum bid amount to recover your cost if you want to.
Okay. Because Terry's gotta go out there, obviously.
Yeah, and there's still some legal stuff to go. But not like these 657A legal
Right.
costs.
Okay. Separate issues
Yes.
Right.
with the tax situation.
It's an opportunity to spend a lot less money and not have the legal fees that we have with the others.
Right.
And clean up that lot, clean up that corner.
If I remember right, Terry hadn't been there in some time.
In it, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been in it for a long time, but I don't think it doesn't have utilities now, does it? Doesn't have anything,
Was that?
doesn't have
It
utilities.
has had utilities
for-
probably for
Long time.
2-3 years.
Yeah.
But that's lovely.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, there's the one section of the back section of the house is separating from
There's
this
coons living in it.
primary structure, so it's likely it's probably not habitable at all at this point. Yeah, because it's probably destroyed on the inside.
I don't know what to think.
So,
I'll make a motion to proceed.
I second that.
all right. Motion to approve by Poston, seconded by Helm.
Poston,
Yes.
No.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston,
Yes.
Cummins.
Yes.
Okay, next item is discussion and possible action concerning the electronic safety data sheet program with Binder Works for $4,051.75.
We had Sandy in here a few weeks back and we had to present this before. She went back, she did a more accurate account of what we actually have. I think, in one of my attachments, we are looking at approximately 495, 500 was the next level up. She emailed me or text messaged me today and said that if we were to kind of clean up our doubles and singles of just one unit on a shelf, we'd be down to about 359, 349, which puts us well below the 500. The only department she didn't go up to was the aquatic center. I don't see them getting us back up there to exceed that number. So I actually have the new price guide for you on that. So that's the most accurate I have for a 2-year contract with that being on your phones. So any discussion on that?
Is that unlimited app usage?
Yes.
I figured so, with the cost, I just wanted to
Yep.
make sure.
Unlimited app usage, unlimited users.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, how many users are there?
As long as you have a smart device, you can get on it.
Is there one person who's gonna be like,
Binder Works controls it.
okay,
We'll give them everything that we've accumulated through
Okay.
Sandy, and then they'll come in here, I do believe, and do an audit just to make sure everything is correct.
Right.
and then the department heads will be in charge of keeping it up to date or?
Yeah, anything that comes in, we notify Binder Works, they automatically just put it right in, and we can do, I bring it up on my phone, but you have so many a year that you can add.
And they re-audit yearly too? or
Yeah,
no?
this is a 2-year contract, so they'll
They would wait for the 2 years and then they would
Yeah.
come back.
Correct.
So this is 4,000 a year?
This is 4,000 for
For
both
2
those
years.
years.
For the 2-year contract, yeah.
It's cheap.
If you looked at the next step up, if we had over 500, it's like double.
That gives you a little bit of room for growth too.
Yeah.
Depending on what the aquatic center has, but I
Yeah.
can imagine they got 150 chemicals
The
up there, I hope
only
not.
other really department that wasn't added into this was, Brad's department, the ambulance, with all his drugs and everything else that he has in there. We decided not to add those. He's
He's on his own.
informing me that we would be well above
He's on
our
his own.
500, so.
We don't wanna know how many.
And he's, I've actually seen his stuff and he is up to date. He's got some nice data sheets. It's just not electronic.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Helm, seconded by Walker.
Welker,
Yes.
Helm,
Yes.
Johnston, Cummins, Austin,
Yes.
All right, last item, discussion and possible action concerning transformers, transformer repairs.
Back, let's see, beginning of March, I had Solomon Transformers come and pick up a collection of transformers I've had down at the lower yard. They're pad mounts. These are all underground pad mount transformers, no pole mounts. There was 6 of them. One of them was a 3-phase pad mount, which goes in front of Keller's over there. We've made that work. We've used old road signs to fill in gap work and stuff like that. They cannot fix that one. It had a nice lovely bird on the side that was painted on there. That transformer was unsavable. So there's a replacement. We've got the dimensions back. We've checked the dimensions they gave us. It does fit on that pad. The only other option I see for that one, if you don't want to have, it's an expensive transformer. It's about $29,000. It's got an extra special coating just because of the sidewalk soles. That's what deteriorated this last one. I remember putting it in there, so it wasn't that old, and it failed fairly quickly. There's a special coating on this, which increases the price. It's about another 13 grand. So I just thought I'd bring this up. That one was an individual one that I highlighted with the agenda item that I put out there for you guys, just because it is more expensive. The other transformers are all single phase stuff. It's just get reconditioned, remanufactured. There's a 3-year warranty and all that stuff. There's only one in here that I would ask that you guys think about if you want me to hold it out or not. It's a replacement. I think I can get a better price just buying a new one from somebody else, because this one's not gonna be fixed. This is just a replacement for $5,100. So I can find a better price, but that's the quote they gave me for replacing that one. But everything else is reconditioned or it can't be fixed at all. So, but that 3-phase, we can relocate it to another location. It's gonna be in a parking spot next to Keller's, so you're gonna lose a parking spot, but there's a lot more work to it. I gotta tear up the sidewalk that's there. I gotta extend wires, splice in primary, so it can be done. It's just costly and time consuming. Like I said, if you guys want me to look at this one replacement for 5,100 from another location, I'm fine with that too.
So the one that's at Keller's is okay?
Yeah, it works just fine. I just have street signs, which, are just regular street signs that will rust, so I'll have to get to it another time to take those rusted signs out, because they'll rust away with this sidewalk, so. Yeah. And this actually is what, Keller's is vacant, so it's them, the bank, what is that, community right next to them, or is that state?
Citizens.
And then, I think there's a dentist right next to them. They're the ones that are all on this transformer. These transformers, if we were to move forward, wouldn't get here till just before July or at the beginning of July, so this would be in next year's budgeting also.
So you're
Not this year's.
budgeting for it.
Yeah,
Where would you relocate that if you did? Keller's.
it'd be the closest parking spot right there behind the sidewalk. Yeah, it'd be your spot. Well, I mean,
What you laughing at, Abby?
I'm limited on where I can put it, so.
We can put your name on it.
And I know parking downtown.
We'll name it
is-
George.
Yeah, parking downtown there's not a ton of it, so
No.
I'd hate to take up one spot.
So you gave us some options. What's your plan A?
Plan A,
In a perfect world, what would you want?
just approve what I gave you. Plan B is approve everything except for that one transformer that I think they can get a better price on.
I'll motion that.
Which one?
The second one.
Okay.
Like, how much better are you talking?
Uh,
Price-wise, do you think?
Probably save about 2,000.
2,000 is 2,000.
It's true.
Get you halfway to another one.
It's true.
That's why I was asking about that transfer. If you moved it, you'd save 13,000 if you didn't get the coating, correct?
Yeah, if I
There's
just
nowhere to
got
put
it
it,
without the coating,
There's nowhere to put it.
yeah. I could put it right back to that same spot in 10 years, it'll probably fail again.
I won't be on the council then.
You may not be in Iowa then.
Exactly.
You'd be down in Fort Myers.
I second Plan B.
Plan B, okay.
All right, so a motion from Walker, seconded by Helm. For
And that would be to
option
get a,
B,
yep, get a better price on that other transfer.
correct,
Yes.
correct.
And you'll come back to us with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I can let you know what it is, yep. I'll remove that one from this.
Helm,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Bastian,
Yes.
Yes.
All right, next on the agenda is reports from mayor, council manager, city manager, department heads. Nothing, right? Any department heads have anything?
Since I'm standing up still.
Yeah.
Heater project, going really well. All the piping is in, all the wire except for crossing South Street by Alba's to the primary riser poles is all done. So that's the last piece they gotta put in. Once that's done, Tri-City is still working on making all the elbows up, so we're moving forward. I will schedule an outage with Sear Poly when it gets closer to time, when all those other elbows are done. They know it'll be at least a day, if not 2 days without power. Depends on how smooth and things develop.
So Saturday and Sunday.
It doesn't matter to them because they are open 24/7, so lucky me, I can do it during regular working hours. But it's gonna be a long day, so even an 8-hour day is not gonna be long enough. They'll have to pull out the old wire, put in new wire for the transformer, and I go between the transformers and put some infrastructure in years ago. So that's what I got for that. Tree's been taken care of for the most part this morning. We had a tree come down on the primary line, little outage, no big deal. Guys got some tree trimming experience, so. That went well, so yeah, we'll have Steve, help us finish cutting up the big stuff that's still on the tree, but we did everything we could with ours, so. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else? Linda, Steve? No? Okay, then on to adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Helm, seconded by Walker.
Cummins,
Yes.
Bastian,
Yes.
Yes.
Helm.
Yes.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.